Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. The ship was humanity's pride, a dreadnought that had taken 20 years to build. Its gray hull stretched for over 2 kilometers, bristling with weapons and defensive systems. But today, Morrison felt small despite commanding such a powerful vessel. The communications screen flickered to life, showing the reptilian face of Chancellor Vextar. The alien's golden eyes gleamed with arrogance as he spoke in his harsh, clicking language. The translation device made his words sound cold and mechanical. "Human Admiral Morrison," Vextar said, his forked tongue flicking between his teeth. "The Galactic Empire has been patient with your species, too patient. Your people have had 50 years to join our great civilization, and you have refused every generous offer." Morrison kept his face blank, though his hands clenched behind his back. Captain Lisa Blake stood beside him, her blue eyes fixed on the screen. She was one of the best officers in the Earth Defense Force, and Morrison trusted her completely. "The time for patience is over," Vextar continued. "The Empire demands that Earth surrender control of all colonies beyond your home system. You will also pay tribute of 1 million tons of rare metals each year. These terms are not negotiable." The alien's image disappeared, leaving the bridge in silence. Morrison could feel the eyes of his crew on him. They were waiting for his response, just as billions of humans across Earth and the colonies were waiting. "Sir," Blake said quietly, "the Empire has over 3,000 star systems under their control. Their fleet is massive. We have maybe 200 ships that could fight them." Morrison nodded slowly. He knew the numbers. The Galactic Empire had ruled most of the galaxy for over 1,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of species, turning them into slaves or second-class citizens. Their technology was advanced, their armies vast, but Morrison also knew something about humans that the Empire did not understand. "Contact Earth Command," he said. "I need to speak with President White immediately." The call took several minutes to connect across the light years. When President Karen White's face appeared on screen, Morrison could see the worry in her brown eyes. She was young for a president, only 45, but she had led Earth through difficult times before. "Admiral," she said, "I assume you received the Empire's demands?" "Yes, Madam President. They want our colonies and tribute payments. If we refuse, they've threatened to take what they want by force." President White was quiet for a moment. Behind her, Morrison could see the Earth through the window of the orbital station where she worked. The blue and white planet looked peaceful from space, but Morrison knew that billions of people were counting on them to make the right choice. "What are our options?" the president asked. "We can surrender and hope they treat us fairly," Morrison said, "though their history suggests they won't. Or we can fight." Against the entire Galactic Empire? That would be suicide. Morrison straightened his shoulders. "Maybe. But there's a third option. We declare them banned from our space entirely. We draw a line and say that no Imperial ship can enter Terran territory." Blake looked at him in surprise. "Sir, that's basically declaring war on the most powerful force in the galaxy." "Is it?" Morrison asked. "Or is it standing up for what's right? The Empire thinks we're weak because we're young. They think we'll roll over like every other species they've conquered. But they don't know us." President White leaned forward. "Explain." Morrison walked to the star chart display. With a gesture, he highlighted human space. Earth sat at the center, surrounded by 37 colonial systems. It looked tiny compared to the vast empire that surrounded them. Every species the Empire conquered was already broken, Morrison said. They were fighting civil wars or dying from plagues or split into countless factions. But humans are different. We've been through worse than anything the Empire can throw at us, and we came out stronger. He touched another control, and the display showed Earth's history. Wars, disasters, near extinctions, and recovery. Over and over, humanity had faced destruction and survived. We've learned to work together when it matters, Morrison continued. Every colony, every ship, every soldier knows they're part of something bigger. The Empire rules through fear. We fight for each other. President White was quiet for a long time. Morrison could see her thinking, weighing the options. Finally, she spoke. Admiral, if we do this, there's no going back. The Empire won't accept such an insult. They'll come for us with everything they have. Yes, ma'am. But if we surrender now, we'll spend the rest of human history as slaves. Our children will grow up bowing to alien masters. Is that the future we want? Blake stepped forward. Sir, if I may, the Admiral is right. I've studied every species the Empire has conquered. They all had one thing in common. They gave up hope. They decided survival was more important than freedom. And what did it get them? Morrison added. They're still slaves 1,000 years later. Their cultures are gone. Their children don't even remember what freedom looked like. President White closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, Morrison saw steel there. Draft the Declaration, she said. Make it clear and simple. The Galactic Empire is banned from all Terran space. Any Imperial ship that enters our territory will be treated as an enemy vessel. Madam President, Blake said, this will shock the galaxy. No one has ever defied the Empire like this. Good, White replied. Maybe it's time someone did. Morrison felt a smile tug at his lips. I'll send the message immediately. Send it to everyone, the President ordered. Every Imperial world, every conquered species, every neutral system. Let the whole galaxy know that Earth will not bow. The communication ended, leaving Morrison alone with his thoughts. He looked out at the stars again, but now they seemed different. Instead of an endless void filled with enemies, he saw possibilities. Somewhere out there, other species were waiting for someone to stand up to the Empire. Today, humanity would show them it was possible. Blake, he said, prepare the fleet for combat operations, and send a message to all colonial governors. Tell them to prepare their defenses. Yes, sir. And the message to the Empire? Morrison walked to his command chair and sat down. For the first time in hours, he felt calm. Tell Chancellor Vexitar that Earth rejects his demands completely. As of this moment, the Galactic Empire is banned from all Terran space. Any Imperial vessel that crosses our borders will be fired upon without warning. Blake smiled. Sir, this is going to start a war. No, Morrison replied, watching the stars. This is going to start a revolution. President Karen White walked through the halls of the United Earth Assembly building, her footsteps echoing off the marble floors. The building sat on Luna, Earth's moon, and through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see her home planet, hanging in the black sky like a blue jewel. Today would change everything. General Mike Torres fell into step beside her. He was a big man with gray hair and kind eyes, but White knew he could be fierce when Earth was threatened. Behind them walked Admiral Morrison, who had arrived from the fleet just hours ago. The delegates are nervous, Torres said quietly. Word has already spread about your message to the Empire. Some of them think we've lost our minds. White nodded. She had expected this. The 37 human colonies had always been independent-minded, but they had never faced anything like the Galactic Empire before. They have good reason to be scared, she admitted. What we're doing is dangerous, but it's also necessary. They reached the Great Assembly Hall. Inside, delegates from every human world sat in curved rows of seats. Representatives from Mars, Europa, Alpha Centauri, New Tokyo, and dozens of other colonies, all of them waiting to hear why their president had just declared war on the most powerful force in the galaxy. White walked to the center podium and looked out at the faces staring back at her. Some looked angry, some scared, some curious. All of them deserved the truth. "Friends," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. "3 days ago, the Galactic Empire gave us an ultimatum. They demanded that we surrender our outer colonies and pay tribute. They gave us no choice in the matter." A murmur ran through the crowd. Delegate Chen from New Shanghai stood up. "Madam President, surely negotiation was possible. The Empire is vast and powerful. Could we not have found some compromise?" White had expected this question. "Dr. Carter, would you please share your research with the Assembly?" Dr. Alex Carter was a thin man with wild hair who had spent his life studying alien species. He approached the podium carrying a data pad. "I have studied every species the Empire has conquered," Carter said, his voice shaking slightly. "All 437 of them. I can tell you exactly what compromise means to the Empire." He touched his data pad, and holographic images appeared above the assembly. They showed alien cities, but something was wrong with them. The buildings were gray and ugly, the streets empty. "This is Keltar Prime," Carter continued. "The Keltarians were master builders. Their cities were works of art that could be seen from orbit. This is what those cities look like now, after 500 years of imperial rule." More images appeared. Alien beings working in mines, their faces blank and hopeless. The Xanthari were warriors and poets. They wrote songs that could make stars weep. Now they work in imperial factories and their children don't even know what poetry is. Carter's voice grew stronger. "The Empire doesn't negotiate. They don't compromise. They conquer completely. They take everything that makes a species special and crush it into dust." Delegate Rodriguez from New Mexico stood up. "But what choice do we have? They have thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. We're just one small species." Admiral Morrison stepped forward. "May I answer that?" White nodded, and Morrison walked to the front of the hall. "Delegate Rodriguez is right," Morrison said. "The Empire is huge and we are small, but size isn't everything. I've been studying their military tactics, and I've found something interesting." He gestured, and new images appeared. Star charts showing imperial conquests over the centuries. "Every species they conquered was already weakened," Morrison explained. "The Vargans were fighting a civil war. The Heptarchs were dying from a plague. The Xanth had split into 12 different factions. The Empire never fights anyone at full strength." "What's your point?" asked Delegate Kim from Titan Station. "My point is that we're different," Morrison replied. "We're not fighting each other. We're not dying from disease. We're not split into factions. We're united in a way the Empire has never seen before." General Torres stepped up beside Morrison. "I've run the numbers," he said. "Yes, the Empire has more ships, but they have to control thousands of worlds. They can't bring their entire fleet against us without risking rebellion elsewhere." "Besides," Morrison added, Human technology is advancing faster than theirs. We innovate, we adapt. They rely on old methods that have worked for centuries. White saw some delegates nodding, but others still looked doubtful. Delegate Park from Ceres spoke up. Even if we could fight them, should we? My world has 2 million people. Mars has 50 million. Is it worth risking all those lives? White felt the weight of the question. This was the heart of the matter. Let me tell you a story, she said. 60 years ago, my grandfather lived on Earth during the water wars. Billions of people were dying from thirst and conflict. It would have been easier to give up, to accept that humanity was doomed. She paused, looking around the hall. But they didn't give up. They worked together. They shared resources. They found solutions. And because they chose to fight for a better future instead of accepting destruction, we're here today. This is the same choice, Torres added. We can surrender and hope the Empire treats us kindly. But hope isn't a plan. Dr. Carter stepped forward again. I've studied the genetic records of conquered species. After a few generations under Imperial rule, they lose something fundamental. Their creativity dies. Their innovation stops. They become nothing more than tools for the Empire to use. Is that what we want for our children? White asked. A future where human art, human music, human dreams are all forgotten? Where our kids grow up believing that freedom is just a word? The hall was quiet now. White could see the delegates, thinking, weighing the risks. Delegate Washington from Luna City stood up. Madam President, if we do this, we'll be alone against the entire galaxy. White shook her head. No, we won't be alone. Every conquered species in the galaxy is waiting for someone to show them that the Empire can be beaten. When we stand up, others will stand with us. And if we're wrong, Delegate Park asked. Morrison answered. Then we'll die as free humans instead of living as slaves. The vote was called. One by one, the delegates stood to cast their ballots. White watched as hands were raised across the hall, some hesitant, some eager, all understanding the weight of their choice. When the counting was done, the result was clear. 35 colonies voted yes. Only 2 voted to seek compromise. White felt tears in her eyes as she looked out at the assembly. The United Earth Assembly has spoken. We will not surrender our freedom. We will not abandon our colonies. The Galactic Empire is hereby banned from all Terran space. The hall erupted in cheers and applause, but White knew the real work was just beginning. Somewhere out there, Chancellor Vextar was probably planning his response. General Torres, she said as the delegates began to file out, begin immediate preparations for defense of all human worlds. Yes, ma'am, Torres replied. And the colonies that voted against us? White looked out the window at Earth, hanging peaceful in the darkness. They're still human worlds. We protect them all. As she walked back through the halls, White felt the weight of history on her shoulders. Today, humanity had chosen freedom over safety. Tomorrow, they would learn if that choice would save them or destroy them. Commander Ben Lewis gripped the armrests of his captain's chair as his patrol squadron moved through the asteroid field near Titan. The UES Ranger was a small ship, built for speed and reconnaissance, but Lewis had pushed her engines harder than ever before in the 3 days since Earth's declaration. Contact on sensors, called Lieutenant Sam Brooks from the navigation station. Multiple ships approaching from the outer system boundary. Lewis felt his stomach tighten. They had all known. This moment would come. The Empire would test Earth's resolve, and they would test it soon. "How many ships?" he asked. 12 contacts, sir. Imperial design. They're big." Through the view screen, Lewis could see the Titan mining station in the distance. 5,000. People lived and worked there, mining the rare metals that powered Earth's technology. It was exactly the kind of target the Empire would choose for their first probe. "Signal Captain Foster on the Guardian," Lewis ordered. "Tell her we have Imperial ships incoming." The UES Guardian was the largest ship in the patrol squadron, nearly the size of a cruiser. Captain Amy Foster commanded her with the kind of steady confidence that made other officers feel safe, but even the Guardian would be small compared to Imperial warships. "Sir," Brooks said, his voice tight with worry, "the Imperial ships are demanding passage through our space. They say they have the right to travel where they please." Lewis almost laughed. After 50 years of carefully avoiding human space, the Empire suddenly needed to travel through it on the same week Earth banned them. They weren't even trying to be subtle. "Open a channel," Lewis said. The view screen flickered, showing the bridge of an Imperial ship. The alien captain was a Korthak, one of the warrior species the Empire used for military operations. His skin was dark green and covered in ritual scars, his forearms ending in clawed hands. "I am Admiral Korthnex of the Imperial 4th Reconnaissance Fleet," the alien said in accented English. "You will move aside and allow us passage to the mining station." Lewis stood up slowly. He was young for a commander, only 32, but he had trained for this moment his entire career. "I am Commander Lewis of the Earth Defense Force," he replied. "You are in violation of Terran space. Turn around and leave immediately." Korthnex's eyes narrowed. "Human, you are in command of 6 small ships. I have 12 heavy cruisers. Do not force me to destroy you." "The size of my force doesn't matter," Lewis said calmly. "You have been warned. Leave our space now." The alien admiral's laugh was harsh and grating. "Your species has declared war on the galaxy itself. We will teach you the price of such arrogance." The channel closed, and Lewis turned to his crew. They were all young, most of them barely out of the academy. But their eyes showed determination, not fear. "All ships," Lewis broadcast on the squadron frequency. "Prepare for combat. Remember your training and trust your squad mates." Captain Foster's voice came over the comm. "Commander, we're outnumbered 2 to 1, and their ships are larger than ours." Lewis smiled grimly. "Then we'll have to be smarter." The Imperial ships moved forward in a tight formation, their energy shields glowing like small suns. Lewis had studied their tactics during his years at the Academy. The Empire relied on overwhelming firepower and heavy armor. They expected their enemies to panic and make mistakes. "Brooks, plot a course through the asteroid field. All ships, follow our lead." The Ranger dove toward the largest asteroid cluster, her engines screaming. Behind her, the other 5 human ships followed in perfect formation. It was a dangerous move, requiring precise piloting to avoid the spinning rocks. But Lewis was counting on that danger. "Sir, the Imperial ships are following us into the field," Brooks reported. "Of course they are," Lewis muttered. "They can't let us escape or they'll look weak." The first barrage of Imperial fire lit up space around them. Energy beams scorched the asteroids, sending chunks of rock spinning in all directions. But the human ships were small and fast, dancing between the obstacles like fighters in an aerial dogfight. "Now," Lewis ordered. The human ships split up, each one taking a different path through the asteroid field. The Imperial formation, designed for open space combat, couldn't follow without breaking apart. "Target the lead ship," Lewis commanded. All weapons fire! The UES Ranger was small, but her weapons were the latest human technology. Plasma torpedoes streaked toward the Imperial flagship, followed by bursts from the ship's rail guns. The other human ships added their fire, concentrating on a single target. The Imperial Admiral had expected the humans to scatter and run. Instead, they had turned the asteroid field into a trap. His large ships couldn't maneuver properly, while the human vessels used the rocks as cover and firing positions. "Direct hit on their shields," called Lieutenant Hayes from Weapons Control. "Their energy levels are dropping, but the Imperials were learning fast." Korthnek split his force, sending smaller groups to hunt down the human ships individually. Lewis watched as the UES Falcon found herself surrounded by 3 Imperial cruisers. "Foster," he called over the comm, "take the Guardian and support the Falcon. Brooks, get us behind that big asteroid." The space battle raged for 20 minutes. Human ships appeared from behind rocks to fire quick bursts, then disappeared again before the Imperials could respond. It was exhausting, requiring perfect timing and coordination. Then Lewis saw his chance. The Imperial flagship had moved too close to a large asteroid while chasing the UES Comet. The rock was big enough to block the other Imperial ships from helping their admiral. "All ships converge on the flagship. Maximum firepower." 6 human ships appeared around the Imperial Admiral's vessel like sharks surrounding wounded prey. Their combined fire overwhelmed the ship's shields and tore into its hull. Explosions blossomed along the massive vessel's sides. "Admiral Korthnek," Lewis broadcast, "your flagship is crippled and you've lost 3 other ships. Withdraw now or we'll destroy the rest of your force." There was a long pause before the alien admiral responded. "This is not over, human. The Empire will remember this insult." "I hope so," Lewis replied. "Tell them that this is what happens when they violate Terran space." The Imperial ships limped away, their formation broken and their pride shattered. Lewis watched them go, then turned to check on his squadron. 2 ships had taken damage, but no one was killed. "Sir," Brooks said, his voice filled with amazement, "we actually beat them." Lewis nodded. But he knew this was just the beginning. The Empire had tested human resolve with a small force. Next time, they would come in greater numbers. "Signal Earth Command," he ordered. "Tell them the ban is being enforced. The Empire knows we mean business." As his squadron regrouped near Titan Station, Lewis looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the news was spreading. A small human force had defeated Imperial ships in open combat. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Empire had been forced to retreat. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And sometimes, Lewis thought, a start was all you needed to change the galaxy. Chancellor Vextar stood in the command center of his palace on Nexus Prime, watching the holographic display that showed the Imperial fleet's humiliating defeat at Titan. His golden eyes burned with rage as he replayed the battle for the 3rd time. "Impossible," he hissed, his forked tongue flicking between sharp teeth. 12 heavy cruisers defeated by 6 human patrol ships. Admiral Zekmoth, his most trusted military commander, shifted nervously beside him. The 4-armed aliens' skin had turned a pale blue, a sign of distress among his species. "Chancellor, the humans used the asteroid field against us. Our ships were not designed for such combat." Vextar turned on his admiral with fury. "Excuses. The Empire has conquered 400 worlds. We have faced every kind of warfare imaginable. How did these primitive apes embarrass us so completely?" "Their technology is more advanced than we believed," Zekmoth admitted. "And their tactics were unexpected." The Chancellor's claws scraped against the metal console as he leaned forward. For 1,000 years, the Empire had ruled through fear and overwhelming force. No species had ever dared to defy them so openly. "The galaxy is watching," Vextar said quietly. "Every conquered world, every slave species, every potential rebel is seeing this defeat. If we don't crush the humans completely, others will follow their example." Zekmoth nodded. "What are your orders, Chancellor?" "Assemble the Fourth Imperial. Fleet. All of it. 2,000 ships. I want you to destroy every human world you can find. Make an example that will be remembered for 10,000 years. Meanwhile, in the Mars Orbital Defense Center, Colonel Steve Johnson watched the tactical displays with growing concern. Intelligence reports showed massive Imperial fleet movements throughout the galaxy. They were coming, and they were bringing everything they had. "How many ships?" asked Major Rachel Green, his second-in-command. "At least 2,000, Johnson replied grimly. "Maybe more. They're pulling forces from all over the Empire." Green whistled softly. "That's the largest fleet movement in Imperial history." Johnson nodded. The Empire was taking the human threat seriously now. Too seriously. Mars had 24 orbital defense platforms and a garrison fleet of 60 ships. Against 2,000 Imperial vessels, they wouldn't last an hour using conventional tactics. "Any word from Dr. Adams?" Johnson asked. Green smiled. "He says the quantum torpedoes are ready for field testing." Dr. Paul Adams had been working on the project for 5 years. Ever since human scientists first began studying captured Imperial technology. The idea was simple in theory, but incredibly difficult in practice. Create weapons that could phase through matter at the quantum level. "How many do we have?" 300, Green replied. "Not many for a fleet that size." Johnson looked out through the observation deck at Mars hanging below them. The red planet was home to 50 million people now, with cities sprawling across its surface under protective domes. All of those people were counting on him to keep them safe. "It'll have to be enough," he said. 3 days later, the Imperial fleet arrived. Admiral Zekmoth had never seen anything like it. 2,000 warships stretched across space in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of Sul. Each ship was a masterpiece of Imperial engineering designed to strike fear into the hearts of enemies. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a message from the Mars defense stations." "Put it through," Zekmoth ordered. Colonel Johnson's face appeared on the screen. The human looked calm, despite facing impossible odds. "Admiral Zekmoth," Johnson said, "you are in violation of Terran space. Leave immediately or face the consequences." Zekmoth laughed, the sound echoing through his ship's bridge. "Human, I have 2,000 ships. You have less than 100. Surrender now, and I might allow some of your people to live as slaves." "I'm afraid that's not an option," Johnson replied. "You've been warned." The channel closed, leaving Zekmoth staring at a blank screen. The audacity of these humans was incredible. Did they really think their tiny force could stand against the might of the Empire? "All ships," he broadcast to his fleet. "Begin the attack. Destroy every human vessel and orbital platform. Show them the price of defying the Empire." The Imperial fleet surged forward, energy weapons charging and missile tubes loading. It should have been a massacre. Then the first quantum torpedoes struck. Zekmoth watched in horror as 3 of his heavy cruisers simply exploded. The human weapons had passed right through their shields and armor as if they weren't there, detonating inside the ship's cores. "What kind of weapon was that?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir," his science officer replied, panic creeping into his voice. The torpedoes appear to phase through solid matter. More Imperial ships died as the quantum torpedoes found their targets. The weapons were invisible to Imperial sensors until they exploded, making them impossible to defend against. All ships, scatter formation, Zekmoth ordered. Random evasive maneuvers. But the human defenders had more surprises. The Mars orbital platforms opened fire with weapons the Empire had never seen before. Railguns accelerated projectiles to incredible speeds, punching through Imperial armor like paper. Plasma cannons created holes in space itself, disintegrating anything they touched. "Sir, we've lost 200 ships," his tactical officer reported. Zekmoth couldn't believe it. In 30 minutes of combat, the humans had destroyed 10% of his fleet. At this rate, they would win despite being outnumbered 20-1. "Focus all fire on the orbital platforms," he commanded. "If we can destroy their fixed defenses, we can overwhelm the remaining ships." The Imperial fleet concentrated its massive firepower on the Mars defense stations. Energy beams and missiles filled space as 2,000 ships fired at once. The human platforms returned fire desperately, but they were taking terrible damage. Colonel Johnson watched as Platform 7 exploded in a ball of fire. Then Platform 12. His people were fighting bravely, but the numbers were against them. "Sir," Major Green called from her station, "we're down to our last 50 quantum torpedoes." Johnson made a quick calculation. 50 torpedoes against 1,800 remaining Imperial ships. It wasn't enough. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "Fall back to Earth. We've hurt them, but we can't stop them here." As the surviving human vessels retreated toward Earth, Admiral Zekmoth surveyed the battlefield. He had won, but the victory felt hollow. He had lost nearly 400 ships to a force that should have been crushed in minutes. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're receiving reports from across the galaxy. The battle is being broadcast on every frequency. Everyone knows about the human weapons." Zekmoth felt a chill run down his spine. The Empire ruled through the belief that resistance was hopeless. But the humans had just proven that Imperial ships could be destroyed, that the Empire could bleed. "Continue to Earth," he ordered. "We finish this now." But as his battered fleet limped toward humanity's homeworld, Zekmoth couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed. The humans had lost the battle, but they had won something more important. They had shown the galaxy that the Empire wasn't invincible, and in a galaxy full of enslaved species waiting for hope, that was the most dangerous weapon of all. The news of the Battle of Mars spread across the galaxy faster than any Imperial fleet could travel. On 1,000 conquered worlds, enslaved species gathered around hidden communication devices to watch the recordings. For the first time in centuries, they saw Imperial ships burning in space. On the mining world of Zenthari Prime, a young alien named Haxalen watched the battle footage with tears streaming down his face. His people had once been warriors and poets, but 500 years of Imperial rule had beaten them down into laborers and factory workers. "Did you see?" he whispered to his sister Vexana as they huddled in their worker dormitory. "The Empire can be hurt." Vexana nodded, her eyes bright with something that had been missing from Zenthari faces for generations. Hope. Within days, the first rebellions began. On Keltar, the enslaved builders refused to report for work. On Varga Prime, factory workers sabotaged Imperial weapon production. Across dozens of worlds, the conquered species began to remember what freedom felt like. The Empire responded with typical brutality, sending punishment fleets to crush the uprisings. But for every rebellion they stopped, two more began. The humans had lit a fire that was spreading beyond their ability to control. Commander Helen Murphy stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty as her ship approached the Centauri system. Her mission was to make contact with the Xanthari rebels and offer Earth's support. It was dangerous work, but Murphy had volunteered immediately when Admiral Morrison asked for a diplomat who could also fight. Incoming transmission, reported Lieutenant Davis from the communications station. It's from the Xanthari rebel fleet. The view screen flickered to life, showing Haxland's face. The young Xanthari had aged in the months since the rebellions began. There were new scars on his scaled skin and a hardness in his eyes that spoke of recent battles. "Commander Murphy," he said in carefully practiced English, "I am Haxland, voice of the Free Xanthari. We have heard of Earth's war against the Empire. We wish to join your fight." Murphy smiled. "Haxland, we've heard of your courage. The entire galaxy knows how your people broke free from the mining stations. Earth is honored to have you as allies." "We have 40 ships," Haxland continued, "and 10,000 warriors. Not much against the Empire's might. But we are willing to die for freedom." "You won't die if I can help it," Murphy replied. "We've learned things about fighting the Empire, things we can teach you." The meeting point was a hidden asteroid base in the Centauri system. Murphy's small diplomatic fleet met with rebel ships from 6 different species. In addition to the Xanthari, there were Keltarian builders, Vargan engineers, and others who had thrown off imperial rule. As Murphy walked through the rebel base, she was amazed by what she saw. Different species working together, sharing technology and resources. The Empire had kept its subjects isolated, but rebellion was bringing them together. "They learn fast," Captain Tony Rodriguez told her as they watched Xanthari warriors training with human weapons. Rodriguez commanded the joint human-alien fleet that had liberated 3 systems in the past month. "The Empire made a mistake," Murphy observed. "They kept these species as slaves for so long that they forgot they were once warriors." Rodriguez nodded. "Speaking of warriors, Haxland wants to show you something. They found the young Xanthari in what had once been a storage bay. He had converted it into a planning center, with holographic displays showing Imperial fleet movements across the galaxy." "Commander Murphy," Haxland said, "we have an opportunity. The Empire has pulled most of its forces back to defend the core worlds. The Vega system is lightly defended, but it contains the Empire's largest slave processing center." Murphy studied the tactical display. Vega held over 1 million enslaved beings from dozens of species. If they could liberate it, the symbolic value would be enormous. "What kind of defenses?" she asked. 50 Imperial ships," replied a Keltarian engineer named Torvek. "Mostly older vessels. But the station itself is heavily armed." Rodriguez leaned over the display. "We have 60 ships now, counting the rebel forces, and we have something the Empire doesn't expect." "What's that?" Murphy asked. "Cooperation," Haxland answered. "Each species knows the Empire's weaknesses from their time as slaves. Together, we can exploit those weaknesses." The Battle of Vega began 3 days later. The combined human-alien fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, their ships arranged in a formation that no Imperial tactician had ever seen before. "Sir," the Imperial Station commander reported to Admiral Kethvar, "we have 60 enemy vessels approaching. mixed human and alien design. Kethvar studied the tactical display with confusion. The enemy formation made no sense by Imperial standards. Ships were scattered across space with no clear hierarchy or battle line. Some kind of trap? He wondered aloud. Unknown, sir. Shall we engage? Yes. All ships. Attack formation. Destroy them. The Imperial ships moved forward in their traditional wedge formation, designed to concentrate firepower and overwhelm enemy defenses. But the rebel fleet didn't respond as expected. Instead of forming a battle line, the Allied ships scattered in all directions. Zenthari fighters used their natural agility to strike at Imperial flanks. Keltarian ships, designed for construction work, proved surprisingly effective at ramming enemy vessels. Vargan engineers had modified their ships with weapons the Empire had never seen before. "They're everywhere," Kethvar muttered as his fleet found itself surrounded. Every time his ships moved to engage one group of enemies, another group attacked from a different direction. But the real surprise came when Captain Rodriguez led a squadron of human ships directly at the slave processing station. The massive structure was designed to be impregnable, with shields and armor that could withstand any assault. Rodriguez wasn't planning to destroy it. He was planning to capture it. "All ships, disable the station's weapons systems," he ordered. "Do not harm the structure itself. There are 1,000,000 innocent people in there. Human quantum torpedoes, guided by Zenthari pilots who knew the station's layout, struck precisely at the weapon control centers. Keltarian ships, with their construction knowledge, knew exactly where to hit the shield generators. Within an hour, the station was defenseless. Admiral Kethvar, Rodriguez broadcast, "Your fleet is defeated and your station is under our control. Surrender now, and we'll allow you to leave with your surviving ships." The Imperial Admiral looked around at his shattered fleet. He had started the battle with 50 ships. Now he had 12, and most of those were damaged. "This is impossible," he said. "You're just rebels. Slaves." "No," came Haxelin's voice over the communication channel. "We are free beings fighting for our homes, and we are winning." Kethvar's remaining ships retreated, leaving the Vega system in rebel hands. As the Liberation Fleet approached the massive station, Murphy watched through the view screen as docking bays opened and freed slaves poured out. Zenthari, Keltarians, Vargans, and dozens of other species embraced their liberators. Many of them had been enslaved for their entire lives. They had never seen their home worlds or breathed free air. "Commander," Haxelin said as he stood beside Murphy on the bridge, "this is just the beginning. Word of this victory will spread. More species will join us." Murphy nodded, watching as human medical teams worked alongside alien healers to care for the freed slaves. The Empire had ruled through division and fear, keeping species isolated and hopeless, but the rebels had found something more powerful than fear: unity. "Send a message to Earth," Murphy ordered. "Tell them the Alliance is growing, and tell them that the Empire's days of ruling through terror are numbered." As the combined fleet organized the evacuation of the freed slaves, Murphy felt a sense of pride. Humanity had started this war to protect their own freedom, but they had discovered something greater: the chance to bring freedom to an entire galaxy. The Empire was vast and powerful, but the rebellion was something they had never faced before. It wasn't just one species fighting for survival. It was dozens of species fighting together for the simple right to be free, and that, Murphy knew, was a force that no empire could ultimately defeat. Chancellor Vexitar stood in his war room, surrounded by the holographic displays that showed the rapidly deteriorating situation across his empire. Red markers indicated rebel-controlled systems, and there were far too many of them. In the 6 months since the humans had declared their ban, over 200 worlds had fallen to the rebellion. "The situation is becoming critical," Admiral Zekmoth reported, his forearms gesturing at the tactical displays. "We've lost control of entire sectors. Our supply lines are being cut, and our garrison forces are stretched too thin." Vextar's golden eyes burned with fury. Everything he had built, everything his ancestors had conquered, was slipping away because of one insignificant species on the edge of the galaxy. "How many ships do we have left?" he demanded. 8,000 vessels, Zekmoth replied. "But they're scattered across the galaxy, trying to contain the rebellions. If we gather them for a concentrated attack, the rebellions will spread even further," Vextar finished. "But if we don't crush the humans, the entire empire will fall apart." The Chancellor moved to the main display, studying the Sol system. Earth hung there like a blue cancer, spreading its poison of freedom throughout his domain. "Gather every ship we can spare," he ordered. "I will lead the assault personally. The humans started this war. I will end it." "Sir," Zekmoth said carefully, "that would mean pulling forces from across the Empire. The rebels will certainly take advantage." "Let them," Vextar snarled. "Once Earth is destroyed, the rebellion will collapse. Without their inspiration and their technology, the other species will return to their proper places as slaves." 1 week later, the largest fleet in Imperial history began moving toward Earth. 5,000 ships, led by the Chancellor's personal dreadnought, the Eternal Dominion. It was a vessel over 10 kilometers long, armed with weapons capable of cracking planets. On Luna Base, General Linda Davis watched the approaching fleet through the long-range sensors. She had been preparing for this moment since the war began, but the sheer size of the Imperial force was overwhelming. "How long until they reach Earth?" she asked her aide, Colonel Peters. 18 hours at their current speed," Peters replied. "General, we have 300 ships in the home fleet and 8 orbital defense platforms. The odds—" "I know the odds," Davis interrupted. "Signal Admiral Turner. Tell him to begin Phase 1 of the defense plan." Admiral Jack Turner commanded. The orbital defense grid from his flagship, the UES Defiance. The same ship where Admiral Morrison had first defied the Empire was now the central command vessel for Earth's final battle. "All stations, this is Admiral Turner," he broadcast to every ship and platform in the system. "The enemy is coming with everything they have. This is the moment we've trained for. Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for every free being in the galaxy." As the Imperial fleet approached the outer system, they encountered the first surprise. Hidden among the asteroids and debris of the outer planets were thousands of automated defense platforms, small, nearly invisible, but armed with the latest human technology. "Sir, we're detecting weapons fire from multiple locations," reported the sensor officer aboard the Eternal Dominion. "The humans have seeded the outer system with defense drones." Chancellor Vextar watched as his forward ships began taking damage from an enemy they could barely see. The humans had learned from every previous battle, adapting their tactics to fight a larger force. "Ignore the drones," he ordered. "Push through to the inner system. We destroy Earth and this war is over." But the human defense plan had many layers. As the Imperial fleet moved deeper into the Sol system, they encountered the second phase, the planetary defense forces of Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars. Ships that had been hiding in the shadows of gas giant moons suddenly appeared, striking at the Imperial flanks before disappearing again. They're using hit-and-run tactics, Admiral Zekmoth observed, drawing us deeper into the system while wearing down our numbers. Clever, Vextar admitted grudgingly, but futile. We still outnumber, them 10-1. The running battle continued for hours as the Imperial fleet fought its way toward Earth. Human ships appeared from everywhere, from behind planets, from within asteroid fields, from the shadows of space stations. Each attack took down a few, more Imperial vessels before the attackers vanished. Captain Ryan Kelly commanded one of the most dangerous missions in the defense. His ship, the UES Shadow, was an experimental stealth destroyer designed to be invisible to Imperial sensors. While the main battle raged, Kelly's mission was to penetrate the Imperial formation and strike at their command ships. "We're approaching the enemy flagship," Kelly told his crew. "Remember, we get one shot at this. Make it count." The Shadow drifted silently through space, her stealth systems masking her presence from Imperial scanners. Kelly watched as the massive bulk of the Eternal Dominion grew larger on his view screen. "Target their main reactor," he ordered. "If we can disable their primary systems, it might give our main fleet a chance." But as the Shadow prepared to fire, Chancellor Vextar revealed his own surprise. The Eternal Dominion suddenly launched a massive energy pulse that disrupted every electronic system within 100 kilometers. "Stealth destroyer detected," the Imperial sensor officer reported. "Target acquired." Kelly's ship shuddered as Imperial weapons locked onto her. "All power to engines," he shouted. "Get us out of here." The Shadow raced away from the Imperial flagship, but the damage was done. The stealth attack had failed, and now the Imperials knew about Earth's invisible ships. Clever humans, Vextar mused. "But I have been fighting wars for 300 years. Did you think I wouldn't plan for such tactics?" The Imperial fleet pressed on toward Earth, their numbers reduced but their determination unchanged. As they approached the inner system, they could see their target ahead, the blue-white marble that had started this rebellion. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth." President Karen White's face appeared on the main screen. She looked tired but determined, standing in what appeared to be an underground bunker. "Chancellor Vextar," she said calmly, "you've come a long way to destroy one small planet." "Your world will serve as an example," Vextar replied. "When the galaxy sees Earth burning, they will remember the price of defying the Empire." White nodded slowly. "You may be right. The galaxy will remember this day. But not the way you think." The transmission ended, leaving Vexatar puzzled. What did the human leader mean? He got his answer as the Imperial fleet entered Earth's immediate vicinity. The planet was surrounded by defense platforms, human ships, and orbital weapons. But that wasn't what shocked him. Mixed in with the human fleet were ships from dozens of other species. Zenthari fighters flew alongside human destroyers. Keltarian construction ships had been converted into weapons platforms. Vargan engineering vessels provided support for the defense grid. "Impossible," Vextar breathed. "How did they get here? So quickly?" Admiral Turner's voice came over the communication channel. "Chancellor, you made a mistake when you pulled your forces back to attack Earth. You left the jump routes undefended. Our allies have been arriving for days. The final battle for Earth was about to begin, and it wouldn't be the Empire against humanity. It would be the Empire against every species that had ever dreamed of freedom." As weapons charged and shields powered up on both sides, Vextar realized that this battle would indeed be remembered by the galaxy. But whether it would be remembered as the Empire's greatest victory or its final defeat remained to be seen. "All ships," he broadcast to his fleet, "attack! Today we end this rebellion once and for all." The space around Earth erupted in fire as 5,000 Imperial ships clashed with the combined forces of the free galaxy. The future of countless worlds hung in the balance. The space around Earth became a maelstrom of fire and metal as the largest battle in galactic history erupted. 5,000 Imperial ships crashed against the combined fleet of humans and rebels, their weapons lighting up the darkness between worlds. Admiral Jack Turner watched from the bridge of the UES Defiance as explosions blossomed like deadly flowers across his view screen. "All ships, maintain formation," he broadcast to the Allied fleet. "Don't let them break our defensive line." The battle had been raging for 6 hours and both sides had taken terrible losses. But something was happening that Chancellor Vextar had not expected. With every Imperial ship that fell, 2 more rebel vessels seemed to appear from hyperspace. "Sir," reported Commander Blake from the tactical station, "we're getting reports from across the galaxy. Every system we've liberated is sending ships to Earth. They're coming to help us." Turner smiled grimly. The Empire had always ruled through isolation, keeping their subjects separated and afraid. But the rebellion had connected these species for the first time in centuries. Now they were acting as one. On the Imperial flagship, Chancellor Vexitar was discovering the same thing. "Where are all these ships coming from?" he demanded, as his sensors showed yet another group of rebel vessels dropping out of hyperspace. "Sir," Admiral Zekmoth replied, "our intelligence reports indicate that the entire Outer Rim has risen in rebellion. They're sending every ship they have to defend Earth." Vextar's claws scraped against his command chair. This was supposed to be a simple matter of crushing one defiant world. Instead, he found himself fighting half the galaxy. But the Chancellor had one more card to play. Deep within his flagship's hull was a weapon that the Empire had never used before. A planet-killer device that could turn worlds into dust. "Activate the quantum disruptor," he ordered. "Sir," Zekmoth said carefully, "that weapon has never been tested on an inhabited world. The effects could be—" "I don't care about the effects," Vextar snarled. "If I can't rule Earth, I'll destroy it. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who defy the Empire." But the rebels had one more surprise for the Imperial fleet. Captain Lisa Blake had been waiting for this moment. Her ship, the UES Guardian, carried the most important cargo in the battle: Admiral Morrison and a team of human scientists who had made an incredible discovery. "Admiral," Blake said, as her ship raced through the battle toward the Imperial flagship, "Dr. Adams says the quantum disruptor is charging. We have maybe 10 minutes before they can fire." Morrison nodded. Dr. Adams had been studying captured Imperial technology for months, and he had found something remarkable. The Empire's greatest strength was also its greatest weakness. "Open a channel to all ships," Morrison ordered. "This is Admiral Morrison. We have discovered something about Imperial technology that changes everything." Across the battlefield, human and rebel ships paused in their fighting to listen. "The Empire has ruled for 1,000 years using the same basic technology," Morrison continued. "Their weapons, their shields, their computers, all based on the same quantum principles. But Dr. Adams has found a way to disrupt those principles." Dr. Adams himself took over the broadcast. "Every Imperial ship uses quantum resonance crystals to power their systems. If we can create a specific frequency pulse, we can overload every crystal in their fleet simultaneously." "What do you need?" asked Captain Rodriguez from his position near Jupiter. Every ship needs to focus their quantum torpedoes on the Imperial flagship at the same moment, Adams explained. The combined quantum signature should create a cascade effect. It was an incredible risk. If the plan failed, they would have wasted their best weapons on a single target. But if it worked, all ships, Morrison broadcast, prepare quantum torpedoes. Target the enemy flagship. Fire on my mark. Chancellor Vextar watched as the rebel fleet suddenly stopped their scattered attacks and focused on his ship. What are they doing? He wondered aloud. Sir, all enemy vessels are targeting us, his tactical officer reported. Should we take evasive action? Let them come, Vextar replied. The Eternal Dominion can withstand anything they throw at us, and in 5 minutes, their precious Earth will be nothing but space dust. Morrison counted down on the open channel. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fire. Over 1,000 quantum torpedoes streaked toward the Imperial flagship, their combined quantum signatures creating a wave of energy unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The torpedoes struck the HFY Eternal Dominion's shields, and something extraordinary happened. Instead of exploding on impact, they passed through the shields and began resonating with the ship's quantum crystals. Sir, the Imperial science officer called in panic, the resonance crystals are overloading. The cascade is spreading to other ships. Vextar watched in horror as his flagship systems began failing one by one. But worse, the quantum cascade was jumping from ship to ship, following the same communication networks that connected his fleet. Across the Imperial formation, ships began losing power as their quantum crystals overloaded. Weapons went offline. Shields collapsed. Engines shut down. In minutes, the most powerful fleet in galactic history was reduced to floating metal hulks. Impossible, Vextar whispered as his own ship's lights flickered and died. How did they know? Lieutenant Commander. Susan Bell had the answer. She had been part of the archaeological team that made the discovery which changed everything. While studying captured Imperial computers, her team had found something shocking in the historical records. Admiral Morrison, she reported over the communication channel. You need to see this. The Empire isn't what they claim to be. The data she transmitted showed the truth that the Empire had hidden for 1,000 years. They weren't the ancient civilization that had always ruled the galaxy. They were conquerors who had destroyed the real galactic civilization and built their empire on its ruins. The original Galactic Republic was a democratic union of thousands, of species, Bell explained. They used quantum technology too, but they also created safeguards against it being used for conquest. The Empire removed those safeguards, but they never understood how they worked. Dr. Nicole Wright, another member of the archaeological team, added her own discovery. We found records showing that humans were part of the original Republic. Our ancestors helped design the quantum systems that the Empire has been using all these centuries. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. Humanity hadn't just defeated the Empire through luck or courage. They had used knowledge that was rightfully theirs, technology that their own ancestors had helped create. As the Imperial fleet drifted helplessly in space, Admiral Turner broadcast a message to Chancellor Vextar. Chancellor, your fleet is disabled, and your war is over. Surrender now, and we'll allow you and your people to leave Earth space safely. Vextar looked around his darkened bridge, lit only by emergency power. His 1,000-year empire was crumbling, defeated by the descendants of the very people his ancestors had conquered. "This is not possible," he said again, but his voice lacked conviction. "It's more than possible," Morrison replied. "It's justice. The galaxy belongs to all its peoples, not just those strong enough to conquer others." As rescue ships moved to assist the disabled Imperial vessels, Morrison looked out at Earth hanging peacefully in space. The blue world had not only survived the Empire's greatest assault, it had ended the Empire's reign forever. But the war wasn't over yet. There were still Imperial forces scattered across the galaxy, and the work of building a new galactic government was just beginning. The real victory wouldn't be won in space battles, but in the hearts and minds of billions of beings who had finally learned that freedom was possible. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, President Karen White stood on the observation deck of the New Republic station, watching ships from dozens of species dock at the massive structure. The station orbited the former imperial capital of Nexus. Prime, but it no longer served as the center of an empire. Instead, it had become the meeting place for the first galactic assembly in over 1,000 years. "Hard to believe it's really over," said Admiral Morrison as he joined her at the viewing window. The Admiral looked older now, worn down by months of battles and negotiations, but there was satisfaction in his eyes. "Is it over?" White asked. "There are still Imperial holdouts in 3 sectors, and some of the freed species are fighting among themselves." Morrison nodded. "Chancellor Vexitar surrendered last week. With him in custody, most of the remaining Imperial forces have given up. As for the other conflicts, well, freedom is messy. It always has been." Through the window, they could see the diversity of the new galaxy. Sleek human ships docked alongside the organic-looking vessels of the Zenthari. Massive Keltarian construction ships worked to repair war damage, while small Vargan scouts flitted between the larger vessels like busy insects. Captain Lisa Blake approached them, carrying a data pad with the latest reports. "Madam President, Admiral, the Assembly is ready to begin the final session." The main assembly hall was a marvel of engineering, designed to accommodate representatives from over 400 different species. Each delegation had seating appropriate to their biology, with environmental controls that could support everything from methane-breathing heptarchs to the crystalline Vectari. President White took her place at the central podium, looking out at the gathered representatives. It was an incredible sight. For the first time in a millennium, every species in the galaxy had an equal voice in their own government. "Friends," she began, her words translated into hundreds of languages simultaneously, "we gather today to formally establish the new Galactic Republic, not as conquerors or rulers, but as equals seeking to build a better future for all our peoples." The response was a cacophony of sounds as different species showed approval in their own ways. Humans and Zenthari applauded, Keltarians hummed in harmony, and the Vargans clicked their mandibles in rhythm. But not everyone was celebrating. In a private chamber elsewhere on the station, former Chancellor Vextar sat in confinement, watched over by guards from multiple species. His golden eyes had lost their fire, replaced by the hollow look of someone who had seen his entire world collapse. Commander Ben Lewis, now promoted to captain, was among the guards. He looked at the former Imperial leader with a mixture of pity and caution. "Do you understand what you did wrong?" Lewis asked quietly. Vextar looked up at him with tired eyes. "I maintained order. I brought stability to the galaxy. Without the Empire, there will be chaos." "Maybe," Lewis admitted. "But there will also be freedom. And sometimes freedom is worth the risk of chaos." The former chancellor was quiet for a moment. Your species destroyed everything I built. Everything my ancestors built. No, Lewis replied. We helped tear down a prison that was disguised as a civilization. What gets built in its place will be up to all of us, working together. Back in the assembly hall, the voting had begun. Each species was choosing whether to join the new galactic republic or remain independent. It was a choice that no conquered world had been allowed to make for over 1,000 years. One by one, the delegations cast their votes. The Zenthari voted yes, their representative Haxlan speaking eloquently about the value of cooperation over conquest. The Keltarians voted yes, with their engineer Torvek explaining how collaboration had always been stronger than domination. Not every species chose to join. Some, traumatized by centuries of imperial rule, preferred to remain isolated and independent. Others wanted time to rebuild their cultures before making such a commitment. And that's okay, President White said as the voting concluded. The Republic exists to serve its members, not to rule them. Any species can join when they're ready or leave if they choose. The final tally showed that 312 species had voted to join the new Galactic Republic. It was more than enough to create a stable government, but small enough to remain manageable. Admiral Morrison was elected as the first Supreme Commander of the Republic Defense Force, with representatives from multiple species serving under him. Captain Blake became the head of the Diplomatic Corps, while Dr. Adams led the new Interspecies Science Council. But perhaps the most important decision was the smallest one. When it came time to choose a capital world, the Assembly voted unanimously to establish a rotating system. The capital would move every 10 years, ensuring that no single world or species could dominate the others. The Empire failed because it concentrated all power in one place, explained Delegate Haxlan. The Republic will succeed because power belongs to everyone. As the formal ceremonies concluded, President White found herself back at the observation deck, this time joined by representatives from across the galaxy. They watched as the first Republic flag was raised over Nexus Prime, replacing the Imperial banner that had flown there for centuries. "What happens now?" asked Dr. Wright, the archaeologist who had helped uncover the truth about the Empire's origins. "Now we do the hard work," White replied. "Building a government is easy compared to making it function fairly for hundreds of different species." Captain Rodriguez, who had been instrumental in liberating the outer systems, raised a concern that many shared. "There are still species out there who prefer the old ways. What if they try to rebuild the Empire?" Morrison had an answer for that. "Then we'll stop them. But not by conquering them. We'll stop them by showing that cooperation works, better than domination." Commander Helen Murphy, now Director of Interspecies Relations, added her own thoughts. "The Empire ruled through fear because they believed that different species couldn't work together. We've proven them wrong. Every time we succeed together, we make it harder for another empire to rise." As the celebration continued around them, President White looked out at the stars and thought about the future. It wouldn't be easy. Democracy never was. There would be disagreements, conflicts, and probably wars between member species. But there would also be freedom. Children would grow up knowing they had a voice in their own government. Scientists would share knowledge freely instead of hoarding it for military advantage. Artists would create beauty instead of propaganda. "You know what the best part is?" Captain Kelly said as he joined the group. His stealth ship had been instrumental in the final battles, and he had earned the right to speak his mind. "What's that?" White asked. Chancellor Vextar was wrong about one thing. He said there would be chaos without the Empire. But look around. This isn't chaos. This is what harmony actually looks like. And he was right. The station buzzed with activity as hundreds of species worked together to build something new. There were arguments and misunderstandings, but there was also laughter and cooperation. It was messy and loud and complicated, but it was free. As the first day of the new Galactic Republic came to an end, President White made one final entry in her personal log. Today we proved that the dream of the original Galactic Republic wasn't dead, just sleeping. It took a small blue world on the edge of nowhere to wake it up. But once awakened, that dream spread faster than any Imperial fleet. The II Empire declared that different species couldn't cooperate as equals. Earth declared that ban invalid. And in the end, the galaxy chose freedom over fear, cooperation over conquest. The stars belong to all of us now, and they always did. Outside the station, ships from across the galaxy prepared to return to their home worlds. They carried with them more than just trade goods and diplomatic agreements. They carried hope. For the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy was truly free. And it had taken humanity's stubborn refusal to bow to tyranny to remind everyone what freedom looked like. The ban on the Galactic Empire had become something far greater, a ban on the very idea that some beings were meant to rule while others were meant to serve. In its place stood a new principle, as simple as it was revolutionary, that every sentient being had the right to choose their own destiny. It was a principle worth fighting for. And as the stars turned in their courses, the free peoples of the galaxy were ready to defend it against anyone who might try to take it away.